Welcome to the Fashion is Cool podcast, where we explore fashion's business side and the entrepreneurs behind it. Hosted by Dwight Carter, your guide to diverse careers and inspiring stories in fashion.
What's up, everyone? My name is Dwight Carter, and I'm the owner of Brainchild Next, and your host for the Fashion is Cool podcast. Today, we're lucky to have a very special guest, Emily Bardon, who is an attorney for Lewis Rice. As the leader of the firm's design and luxury practice group, Emily focuses on providing comprehensive legal services to creative businesses in industries such as fashion, beauty, entertainment, technology, and manufacturing. Emily is a trusted advisor for her clients and works closely with them on corporate transactional matters, including the drafting and negotiation of commercial agreements, mergers and acquisitions, and corporate ownership. Emily is also a fellow member of the St. Louis Fashion Fund, just like myself, and she is an executive board member of the St. Louis Guns and Hoses Boxing Association, board of directors of the Amanda Luckett Murphy Hopewell Center, and the Community Advisor Board on Early Education for the Nine Network. That's a lot.
It is a lot. It is a lot. It keeps me busy, but I love it.
That is a lot. This podcast is to educate people on the different avenues that they can go into in the fashion industry, not just being a designer or opening a store or being a stylist, but, learning about the different careers that are behind the scenes to get all of that stuff rolling and legal, of course. And so I'm super excited to learn. I was a music business major in college, and my favorite class was business law.
Yeah. It's a fun area of law. It's a great way to spend your day. Is what I.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Can you briefly just talk us through your career path and what inspired you to actually talk about? I don't know if you started in fashion law or started in a different avenue of law and then got into fashion, but just kind of like give us an idea of how this all came.
Yeah, absolutely.
To fruition.
So, I've always been interested in fashion, but I don't have the creativity that is required to design. I mean, I love you all, but I do not have that brain. But I've always been a fan of fashion. I went to school at Mizzou I wanted to be a writer. I went to journalism school. I wanted to work at a magazine. That was the original plan. But, once I got into it, I enjoyed it. It was a great way to spend college, but I just didn't have the same passion for it that I noticed other students did. So that's when I started thinking about law school. I don't really know what made me think of law school. I didn't know any lawyers. I have no lawyers in my family. But it was kind of a leap of faith to say, I got to do something. So I'm graduating, let's go to law school. When I went to law school at SLU, when I graduated, I started working at a smaller firm here in St. Louis. It doesn't exist anymore. But I was just doing kind of general corporate transactional type of work. I came to Lewis Rice, where I am now, in 2013. I've been here ever since. And again, I was really, as a young lawyer, doing mostly just general mergers and acquisitions work, general corporate work, a very broad practice, which was great. It was, a way to really get exposure to a lot of different areas, a lot of different industries. But I always kind of gravitated toward our clients who were in these kind of creative spaces in fashion and beauty and design. And, those are the types of companies I like to represent. Just the people were great. The businesses were interesting. It was what I just kind of gravitated towards. And it was a few years ago, I think maybe 2 or 3 years ago, where I noticed that was really where a lot of my work was headed, was in that direction. And I'd been doing it for a long time. And so, I talked with, our management and with folks here at the firm and said, well, we've been doing this type of work for a long time. I've been doing this type of work for a long time personally. Why don't we have a dedicated group for our fashion clients? And they said, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. We need to let people know that we're here, right? And we've been doing this and we have this expertise. And so we kind of formalized, I don't want to say launched, we formalized that group I think it was maybe a year ago, maybe a little over a year ago, for Design and Luxury Group, which I'm the practice leader of, and representing businesses in that creative, fashion, apparel, beauty, design sort of space. And that's kind of how I found my way there. It wasn't something that starting out in law school, it wasn't, oh, I want to be a fashion lawyer. I didn't know that was a thing, quite honestly,
Right.
when I was
Yeah.
in law school. But it was really kind of a path that I kind of found just through trial and error and seeing what it was I liked and kind of following that interest and that passion.
That's great. Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't know it was a thing either. I assumed that, creatives need lawyers, but
Yeah.
it's great that there's something that's specialized for them.
Yeah.
What does a typical day look like for you in the fashion law scheme of things?
Every day is different, which is what I love and what makes it interesting. On a particular day, I might be, I do a lot of transactional type of work, contract negotiation and corporate work, reorganizations and mergers and acquisitions. So, on any given day, I could be working on acquiring a business, or we could be working on a product collaboration agreement or a supply agreement, manufacturing agreement. We could be working on, with the client that is looking to take on investors. And so we're, doing some corporate cleanup and getting ready to, maybe issue some equity. It's, lots of phone calls, lots of reading, lots of writing, but it's, every day is a little bit different depending on where our clients, where they are and what they're working on, which, keeps it interesting, keeps it exciting.
So speaking of, acquiring investors,
Yeah.
a lot of our designers locally, and not just locally, but independent designers in general, always looking for, funding
Yeah.
to put out their collections or hire someone or get new materials or tools to help them with their business.
Mm-hmm.
What is the most important part of that? Like what do they need to prepare to be ready for something like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it depends on kind of what the end goal is. If it's really bringing an investor who's going to own a part of your business, then we want to make sure that your corporate house is in order. Whether that's if you have your entity set up, we want to make sure you've got your operating documents, and we've got a clear picture of ownership. And obviously also, putting that focus into the creative side and making sure you've got that on, the marketing and the creative part. If you're looking for not necessarily to give away an ownership in your company, but you're looking to be financed through a loan or something like that. Again, we want to make sure we've got our corporate records in order. We want to make sure, kind of cleaning things up as much as we can. So there's a nice complete package to present along with whatever the creative piece is, to say, look, this is something you can get behind. This is, we know what we're doing, right? And that's kind of that perception of, look, this is a sophisticated operation. We're going places, and look, we're clean, we're tidy. It gives maybe investors a little bit more comfort, and lenders too.
Right. And how many clients do you have?
Oh, that's a great question. I'd say in any given day, I've got maybe 20 design and luxury clients that I'm kind of balancing. I mean, obviously we have a firm of 130 attorneys. We have, hundreds and hundreds of clients that we work for, but the ones I work on specifically in the design and luxury space, I would say maybe about 20 on any given day.
And they all different levels, like just starting out and kind of like
absolutely run the gamut from I'm just starting out. What do I need to do in order to get my business off the ground? Kind of what do I need to prioritize? All the way to, we're doing business worldwide. We've got institutional investors, we're growing, we're scaling, and everything in between.
Okay. How important is intellectual property in the fashion world? Because you know that every creative is inspired by someone else and trying to take their own twist on the black dress or, items like that. What steps do you take to protect your clients' IP?
Yeah. IP, that's there are a lot, we meet clients where they are in their business, right? We talked about that scale from starting out to really scaling up. But the number one question everybody asks is, how do I protect my IP? How do I protect my brand? How do I protect my intellectual property assets? And, there's not a lot of protection, IP protection in clothing itself, right? Because the idea of getting intellectual property protection is the government saying you have exclusive protection control rights over a particular thing. And our law generally doesn't like to give exclusive protection to things like food, shelter, and clothing, right? Things that we all need. We don't want to discourage and keep people from making and innovating on those things.
Yeah.
There are certainly things you can do. We don't use a lot of, let's say, people have heard of patents, they've heard of copyrights, they've heard of trademark. You're not usually going to get, a patent on a design, on a garment. There are things called design patents. They're kind of tricky to get when you're talking about clothing. It has to be something more monumental and it kind of more in an industrial design, but it's maybe getting a little too into the weeds. But the idea is there's not a lot of protection that patent might be able to provide in an actual design. Maybe you could get some protection, copyright in a design or a fabric or something. But I think anybody in this industry would kind of agree that the real value of a fashion brand is in the brand. The value of the company is in the brand. And so that's where we get into trademark. And so certainly it can get your business off the ground, figure out what that brand is, and do a quick trademark search or engage an attorney to help you get that kind of first search done to make sure that your brand is not going to compete with somebody else, infringe on somebody else's brand. But once you have that clearance, start using it, right? Start building up that goodwill and go ahead and file your trademark for that name, for that word, that we'll call word mark, right? You can stylize it different ways, but that's really what you want to protect is your brand name. Trademarks are great because they last forever. I mean, as long as you continue to renew them. You have to renew them every 5 years, I believe. But once you get it on file, that's kind of, and you start using it and building up that goodwill, that's kind of starts deterring other people from coming out of the woodwork and saying, hey, that's my mark. You're competing with me, you're infringing on my mark. You say, well, I've had my mark on file with the patent trademark office for a year now. So it serves as a deterrent just as much as it serves to give you exclusive rights. So there's certainly ways you can protect IP, but certainly that brand is going to be number one.
So what if it's, what if I start a brand that's called Dwight Carter?
Yeah.
Under my name, and there's other Dwight Carters out there.
Yeah. It's a great
Maybe not
question.
in fashion, but, it's my name.
Yeah. Names are hard to trademark, right? There has to be, because they're names. So there has to be some real intrinsic value in the name, like a Coco Chanel. That there's value in that name. So I would say be wary of, certainly if you want to start a business and use your name as the brand, you could certainly do it. It's not likely that you're going to get a trademark on that name until there is some value associated with it. But, then I think about, a handful of years ago when Beyonce trademarked Blue Ivy or Blue Ivy Carter, and that was a big story about it. She trademarked it in various, and you trademark things in various categories. There's different classes that you can get a trademark in. If you just wanted to trademark your name in, hat design, that's one application. But if you wanted to do hats and t-shirts and bands and shoes and handbags and, those are all separate applications that you file. It's a long answer to your question, which is a simple question. Names are hard to trademark unless there's some intrinsic value beyond just the name.
Okay. By the way, we like long answers too.
Okay. I guess a yes or a no answer would be appropriate in this situation.
So what are the different? You said they're different classes.
Mm-hmm.
split it like different levels, or how does
Yeah,
that?
so
What does that
when
mean?
you file a trademark, and I'll be very candid, I'm not an IP attorney. We happen to have, so plug for our IP team, who I believe are the best, IP team, certainly in St. Louis, maybe one of the best in the region, just because not only because they're super smart and very well versed in the law, but also they're very practical. We may have clients come in and say, I want to protect my IP. I want to do X, Y, and Z, but I only have this amount of money to do it. They're very good at kind of sitting down and coming up with a strategy to say, here's where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. And so anyway, that's a shameless plug for that. Yeah. So when you file a trademark, you file it in, the different classes, which are, different maybe category is a better word. They're technically called classes, but it's, if you want to use this mark in the context of, I use hats as the example, hat, that would be in one category. So if you got your trademark approved, you would have, rights to that trademark, that word mark, whatever it was, connected to the use of hats. That means somebody else could come in and put it on a handbag and get a trademark on a handbag, right? So it's depending on which category you put it in. And it's, it costs a fee per category. So you don't necessarily want to be frivolous and just say, I'm in all the categories, because that's going to be some money. But being strategic and say, well, this is what I'm doing today. This is what I plan to do in a year. This is what I plan to do in 2 years. And certainly an IP attorney can help you kind of come up with that plan and figure out kind of what's the best strategy, where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck.
Is there a specific, I'm sure it's all over the board, but if I'm a new designer, I should budget X, Y, and Z for like what's a rough cost for to get it off the ground?
So, it depends on who you're, so we usually can do things like, and I'm talking just trademark applications and filing. We can usually, after we sit down with a client and talk about what they want to do, we can come up with an estimate, either a flat fee or a fee cap or something like that. Not all law firms will do that. Most of us charge on an hourly basis. So a lot of it depends on who you're using and what they charge. If they're willing to give you some kind of flat rate or some kind of fee cap, which they should, because it's really just, preparing an application and filing it. But it's something you should certainly discuss with, rough ballpark, a couple of thousand maybe, when we're talking about preparing and filing an application with one class. Things could be more complicated than that if you want to file more classes than that. But it's certainly a conversation you should have with your attorney up front so that you don't get surprised with the huge bill. You should know going in, whether it's with our attorneys or a different attorney, you should always know going in what the expectation is, at least for that initial filing. And then there could be, follow-up that comes back from the trademark office that might be on top of that. But you should at least be able to get some kind of ballpark.
That's great. We talked about trademarks and patents. What other types of contracts are most prevalent in the fashion industry, and what key elements should be included in these agreements?
Yeah. So what I look at on a daily basis are things like supply agreements, manufacturing agreements, and third-party logistics. So, warehousing and order fulfillment type of agreements. Influencer agreements are becoming huge. Product collaboration agreements, when you're going to do a joint product with somebody else. All of those I see very regularly in this industry. Certainly when you're looking at an agreement, I always tell my clients, like, I am not here to keep you from doing business, right? My goal is not to stop you I don't want to be the reason you don't do this deal or sign this contract. What my job is as the lawyer is to tell you, what are the risks here? What are the risks? We're going to try to minimize those risks as much as you can. And then I'm going to help you to make an informed decision on what you want to do. And risk appetite is different, right? It's different from client to client. And it's different for one client, if they're just starting out versus if they've got some firepower on their own and have some negotiating power. So, the basic idea is that, when you're looking at an agreement and trying to figure out, is this a good deal? What should I be negotiating here? I look at, well, we'll say I'm looking at the purchasing. Let's take the supply agreement and I'm the purchaser. It would be, what am I buying and what am I paying for it and when do I have to pay, right? Those are kind of basic performance things. I'm looking at how are we allocating risk between the parties, right? If I'm not getting the product I need, if the product's defective, if it's, hung up, on a cargo ship somewhere and it can't get in, which was a huge deal, a few years ago. And then, what are my exit strategy? If this relationship isn't working out, how do I get out? Do I have to pay a fee to get out? What are my exit strategies? And those kind of the basic ideas that when I'm reviewing the contract, that's what I want to at least be able to say, okay, here's what I'm buying. Here's my payment expectation. Here's how we're allocating risk if something goes wrong. And here's how I can get out of it. And what hoops I might have to jump through in order to do that. So those are kind of the main things that I look at when I'm looking at an agreement. I think the thing that trips most people up is the risk allocation, because those are a lot of the more legalese terms that kind of people flinch at a little bit. Things like indemnities and warranties and limitations on liability. Certainly, you don't need a lawyer to negotiate the contract. I think you're in a better position if you get one to help explain some of these concepts to you. But, my general rule is, if nothing else, look at that agreement and see if it has any kind of limitation on liability, right? Or it says, notwithstanding anything in this agreement, the seller's liability will not exceed $500, right? Well, then the contract could say anything else, and it doesn't matter, because if there's a problem, then the most I'm ever going to be able to get out of the seller is $500, right? And so I always look for that kind of language where it's talking about the other party and kind of putting limits on their liability, putting limits on my ability to bring a claim, putting limits on, anything like that, saying that I'm buying things as is, I'm releasing them from liability. Those are the kinds of buzzwords that I look for when we're talking about allocating risk, because that means the risk is falling on me. If I'm buying at my own risk and I get everything as is, then that means, if I get a shipment of my fabric material and it's the wrong fabric or it's defective somehow, I have to eat that cost. It's at my risk. So that's kind of the basic, those are the basic buzzwords that I would look for when figuring out that risk allocation.
So what kind of agreements do you put together for influencers? I know there's probably a handful of influencers watching this right now. So what does that look like?
Yeah. So
that's huge right now. It's been huge for a while, but the social media influencers and the brands and all that.
It is huge. And actually we have a group, my colleague Lauren Carey, she does, primarily works with influencers and helps with influencer agreements. It's starting to be very regulated by the FTC with, disclose. If you're an influencer, you have to put certain disclosures on your posts and they have to be conspicuous. You can't hide them. You have to, disclose that it's an ad, and you have to, make people aware that you were paid in order to provide the review. In our influencer agreements, we want to make sure that that's clear. Not to say these are the things you must do, influencer, but to say, hey, influencer, you have to comply with all of these laws. And it's not my job to tell you necessarily what these laws are and what you have to do. But, making sure that it's clear what you expect of your influencer, that, posts need to comply with applicable law, and, making sure that it's understood, these are the posts that you are, again, it's that performance, risk allocation, exit strategy. So the performance piece, what are we requiring you to do? And being very clear. I've seen contracts before that haven't been clear, where it said, we'll pay you X amount of money and you have to, make these posts. They get through half the posts and then we terminate the relationship, and okay, did I earn the money? I only did half the post. Well, it doesn't really say. It doesn't say you earn half the money for half the post. It says you earn all the money for all the posts. And so you want to just be, make sure that your influencer agreements are clear, what is expected, when the money is earned, when it needs to be paid, and making sure that it's clear that your influencers are responsible for complying with those laws, those applicable laws, because that's become a very regulated part of the industry.
Do you ever deal with scammers? Because I get stuff in my inbox all the time of someone wanting me to be their brand ambassador.
Oh my goodness.
And it's usually not anything that's even related to what I'm doing. No, it has nothing to do with me. And like, why do you want me to represent that? I am not even associated with what you're talking about. So do you get people that fall into that and have to try and get out of it? Or
Right. Well, I mean, we always, yes, let's say yes. You always want to be diligent, right? And this is influencers and just in general, right? Being diligent about understanding who you're getting contacted by, doing some research, doing a little bit of diligence, not blindly opening links and attachments and, looking to see who the sender is, checking to see if it's a legitimate company. You can do basic searches online to see. So yes, I think we live in a world where you can't assume, and I hate to be skeptical, right? But it's kind of my job as a lawyer. We're kind of doomsday preppers, but it's, you've got to assume the worst. And so you've got to check it out. And there's no more just blindly responding to things. You've got to do a little diligence before, if it's too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah, no, they look too good to be true. Half the time. I get a lot of jewelry requests.
Really?
To be I don't know why. I don't know. I think it's all spam, but it's just weird.
I think you would be a great jewelry influencer for the record.
All right, then I'll have to contact you and make sure my agreement's right. Let's talk about employment law.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of independent designers out there that are starting to, hire sewers or someone to do their social media or just someone to kind of help them through their business. What are the issues that arise in the fashion industry and how do you address those? So how does that all work?
Yeah. So employment law, and again, I'll be candid, I'm not an employment attorney. We have a great group. And by osmosis, I have learned some things, just based on, we work very collaboratively with each other. And, when you're starting out and you're getting to that step of needing to hire somebody, right? It's tricky because, like many laws in America, there are some federal laws relating to employment, but each state has its own laws. So it really depends on where you're located and where you're operating from and where you're hiring from, which, I guess keeps us in business, but it's very hard to navigate by yourself. But generally, this is not gospel, but generally, if you've got, one person on, that you're paying as an independent contractor, you're not withholding taxes from them, they're working part-time, maybe 10 hours a week, you're probably okay. You might be okay there. But once you have a reasonable belief that you are that person's primary source of income, right? And I know that's not a great, bright line rule that you can, hang your hat on. But once you have that reasonable belief that you're their primary source of income, you don't want to wait on talking to an attorney and figuring out if you are an employer, right? Because some of these state laws trigger at employee number one. California, I think, and they have a ton of laws for everything, but I think a lot of their employment laws trigger on employee number one. That's wage and hour and overtime, tracking hours and doing that. Discrimination laws. I know in Missouri, our anti-discrimination laws start when you have 6 employees, I think, all the way up to, our federal FMLA. That gets triggered when you have 50. There's, again, different laws get triggered the more employees you get, and it depends on where you're located. So it's not one of those things you want to sit on and go, I think I'll be all right. Once you believe that you have employee number one, when you're their primary source of income, that's where we recommend, don't delay. Go to an attorney, see if you're an employer, and start figuring out what you have to do to be in compliance with the laws of whatever state that you are operating.
That's all right. And what was the acronym FMLA?
Oh,
What is that?
FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act. Thank you. Family Medical Leave Act. So when you go out for an illness or taking care of a family member or something like that.
Gotcha.
But again, that's one of our federal laws that applies nationally, but it only triggers at, I believe, 50 employees. But again, knowing when you have an employee, so you can start tracking when you get to that point, is key. So keep an eye on your radar. Again, if you've got one person, they're part-time, you're treating them as an independent contractor, meaning you're not withholding taxes. Again, don't take that to the bank. You should but just be vigilant about knowing whether or not the extent of that relationship.
Okay, gotcha. That's good to know.
Yeah,
good to know for yourself.
Yeah. Take a note.
We're going to talk about sustainability. How are sustainability initiatives and compliance with environmental regulations impacting fashion law?
Yeah.
How does all that work?
Yeah.
For them?
The past couple of years in particular, there have been so many initiatives, both overseas and in the U.S. I think there was a big law proposed in New York. I think it was last year. But with this idea of eliminating waste, being more sustainable, more environmentally friendly, understanding, having transparency into your supply chain, knowing, where things are coming from, how they're made. It's all kind of coming to a head where I think in the next 5 years, you can't bury your head in the sand and say, I didn't know how this was done. I didn't know how this was made. I wasn't aware that it was, impacting the planet in the way that it is. You've got to know those things, and you've got to start putting procedures into place to get visibility into your supply chain and to understand, so that you're prepared if these laws come to pass. You're able to comply. There's also been a lot of emphasis on, and I think we wrote an article about this maybe a year ago, but there's been a lot of emphasis on greenwashing, which is this idea people are making false advertising claim, but it's in the context of saying my product is environmentally friendly. Maybe not in those terms, either overstating or incorrectly stating the environmental benefits of your product, or that it's sustainable, or that it's whatever kind of claims you're making. And there's been a crackdown recently on people making those types of claims, and the claims are coming as violating false advertising laws, saying I thought I was buying something that was good for the environment, that was environmentally friendly, that was sustainable, and it's false. And so, the best advice I can give on that is, which sounds so simple, but it's true, is to just be truthful in what you're putting out there. You can still say you're, environmentally friendly, or, whatever the claim is, but it needs to be accurate. Whatever it is you're saying has to be accurate. If it's misleading, then you're opening yourself up for a potential claim, a potential false advertising claim.
Yeah. So what about when you have, say you have a vintage dress or a vintage something, and it has a brand on it, and you take that and turn it into something else. You chop it up. You take maybe it's a skirt, you chop it up and turn it into a jacket somehow, and it has the brand on it. Is that, what's the legal? Because I know Gapper Dan used to do that with Louis Vuitton, but they used to take things and make them bigger, or putting them into completely different outfits. What is the law on that?
Yeah. Well, I think it depends on what you're trying to market it as, right? If you're removing the label and you're repurposing it and saying it's your own, again, it kind of goes back to our IP discussion, and that the law wants to encourage the making of clothing, right? Because we all need it. It's functional, right? We're not going to get protection on, a neck hole or a sleeve hole. It's its function. So it depends on what you're trying to do with it, right? There's certainly a lot of counterfeiting is just, insane in this industry. And it's really, it's becoming more and more of a problem. It always has been a problem, but more and more. So if it's a matter of, trying to pass off something that it's not, then we've got a counterfeit issue. But if it's a matter of making something new out of something that already exists, again, as long as you're being truthful and honest about what it is, again, don't take it as gospel. It's all very situational and fact dependent. You shouldn't get into too much hot water, I should say. If you keep doing everything above board and kind of using that guidepost of being honest and accurate and truthful.
Okay. So there's a kind of a fine line on all that.
Right. Do you like how all my answers are, it depends? That's like classic lawyer answer. It depends. That's the answer everybody loves to that all the time.
I like it. I watch a ton of Law and Order, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right. That's right. That's what I always say when people ask if I'm a lawyer. I say yes, but not like the Law and Order panel lawyer. Just so you know, that's like not at all.
That is my lawyer education right there. Every Thursday night. So how has the rise of digital fashion and e-commerce changed the landscape of fashion law?
So, when we're talking about e-commerce, right, which, it's taken over.
Yeah.
The two big issues, right, when you're talking about e-commerce, you're talking about cybersecurity and we're talking about data privacy. There are certainly a host of other things, but those are the two alarm bells when somebody tells me that they've got an online shop or any type of digital platform. I think of data privacy. Cybersecurity. You want to make sure whatever platform you're using has sufficient cybersecurity measures in place, and then you also need to have your own cybersecurity measures. What are those? This is another one of those great answers. It depends, right? There's no great clear-cut rule or procedure about this is the type of cybersecurity protection you need, right? Because it's always going to be a balance of cost versus protection because you can always buy more protection. So it's really going to depend on what your business, where you are in your business, what kind of information you're getting, what kind of transactions you're doing. But you want to make sure whatever platform that you're using has measures in place and that you also take a critical eye with what kind of security measures you have. Data privacy, the other kind of hot button issue is, not talking about issues blowing up over the past 5 years. That one is just, it changes every day, right? I think that's the last time, there's 19 states that have enacted privacy laws, in addition to, obviously the EU and a ton of international laws to keep in mind too. And, it's just like employment law and others where it would be great if we had just one national, federal law that we could just follow and be done with it. But every state does something different, right? To just drive everybody crazy. But, when 5 years ago, if you came to us and said, I'm doing a online shop, I need a privacy policy for my website, we could give you some kind of template policy, easy enough, and you could get it posted. We can't even do that anymore because it's so dependent. I think that's what people don't understand a lot of times is, it depends on what kind of information you're getting, how you're using it, who's giving it to you, where they're located, what rights they have to that information, and craft the policy around those, the answers to those questions. And so it's not as easy as here's a template. And so I would caution anybody out there, when you have an online shop and you're selling things, you have your website, it's very tempting to go online and copy somebody else's or buy go to one of those, websites to download a free privacy policy template or something, or buy something on the cheap just to have something. Because in some cases, it's worse to have a policy that you don't actually follow than it is to have no policy. Right now, now that's not true everywhere. Like I said, there's 19 states that require you to have a policy.
Are we one of the states?
Missouri does not have. You need to have privacy law, but Missouri has not enacted a privacy law yet. We are not one of the 19, but we certainly will be at some point. So it's one of those, you got to take a little time and spend a little money, unfortunately, to get a privacy policy that really does reflect what you're doing, what kind of information you're gathering, so it reflects accurate and complete, so that you can make sure you can comply with the laws of the various states where you're going to be operating, which with e-commerce could, depending on where you allow customers to purchase from, could be a lot of different regulations and laws to keep in mind.
So is it different when, someone sells on their website versus, because now you can sell through Instagram and through TikTok and all those, and that's where a lot of the privacy issues are happening through social media.
Yeah.
Do they have do the social media platforms have their own, I don't know?
Yeah. I mean,
laws
they do.
Or differences?
They do.
Yeah.
I mean, the social media platforms have their own privacy policies and procedures, definitely. It's important, again, for you as the seller to make sure that you have your own policies and procedures in place as well, though, because you are the ultimate, you're the one selling it. And if you're the one with the information, you need to make sure that you are complying with your own rules and policies and that those are communicated to your customers.
So which is safer, having your own or going through one of these social media platforms?
That's I don't know the answer to that as far as which one is safer, because of the landscape right now.
Yeah.
I think that the best thing that you can do is to make sure that your house is in order, because it's getting more complicated by the day.
Yeah.
And so it's best to make sure that your house is in order, so that regardless of where you're selling, you have what you need to comply with the law and to make sure that your customers know what's happening with their data.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. You mentioned a little bit about global. What are the legal challenges associated with operating a fashion business on a global scale? And how do you manage international legal issues?
It's in some ways the same and in some ways much different, right? Which, the basic tenets are going to be the same, making sure you're the ones we've talked about, cybersecurity and data privacy, making sure you're protecting your IP, making sure you're reviewing your contracts diligently and mitigating risks as much as you can. But it obviously on a global platform, you've now expanded, right? And so now you're dealing with customers who are international. You need to make sure that you are in compliance with the appropriate privacy laws wherever it is you're operating from globally. We've always had a global supply chain, but now we're talking about making sure we're in compliance with laws. If you're, setting up shop overseas, making sure their local laws, as far as, importing and exporting and, employment. We've talked about that. So it's the same basic ideas, but expanded and kind of broadening that scope to make sure you're aware. And that's why, it's very tempting to just bury your head in the sand and, put it all out online and hope for the best. But it's, to partner with somebody, like a Lewis Rice Design and Luxury or anybody else, right? It doesn't have to be us, but partnering with an attorney that you trust and that can give you advice and kind of guide you through the growing pains of going from maybe a domestic to an international company is so important. I know hiring a lawyer, usually we get brought in when there's a problem, right? That's when you think to go call your lawyers, when there's a problem. But to be proactive and get us involved on the front end so we can help you make sure that you are, thinking through these issues, talking through them, figuring out a game plan, you end up saving you. It doesn't feel like it at the time, but you end up saving yourself a lot of time and money and heartache later on trying to correct problems than just getting somebody in at the beginning who can help you, from the get go.
Yeah. Because I know since COVID, everyone's doing things online now.
Yeah.
And you have access to everything globally. It's not just selling in your own city anymore.
Right.
You're all over.
Right.
You know, you want to be protected for all that.
Right.
This is good stuff. This is great.
Good.
Really good stuff. So we talked about a little bit in the beginning about our college students and trying to keep them here and
Yes.
different ways they can get involved. So what advice would you give to young lawyers who want to be in the fashion industry? What are the specific skills they need to? Well, you deal with fashion entertainment too. So
Yeah.
does that mean music and acting and all that stuff too?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We represent models and yeah, and we kind of run the gamut. And it's a really fun industry. I found a lot of personal fulfillment in it. As far as I'm 100% on board. Let's keep students here. Let's continue to grow the fashion industry in St. Louis. And that was a big reason kind of behind why we formalized our design and luxury group. Not just to, keep students here because there's a lot of interest in it from our young lawyers, but people are doing this on the coast. There are certainly, it's not necessarily called design and luxury. A lot of them are called, fashion, apparel, beauty. You could go to New York and find somebody who can do this or LA. But you're paying, 4 figures an hour for something you can get here in your backyard, for a lot more of a, reasonable price and, just a sophisticated of work. And so for our students, I'd say number one, if this is the type of law you want to practice, you can do it here in St. Louis, right? You can do it here. We have a great practice here. Certainly there are opportunities on the coast, but we want you to stay. So stay here with us.
Yes.
But as far as, skill set, honestly, I mentioned I went to journalism school at the zoo because I originally wanted to be a writer and do journalism. The skills, and I didn't have necessarily the passion to end up doing that as a career, but the things I loved most about it are the things I do every day now as a lawyer, which is talking to people, kind of interview style, getting to know people, asking them questions, learning about people, because that's what, at the heart of every business are, people who are doing it, especially in this industry. Right. It's people who are creating and making things, which is just so exciting to me. As the person who doesn't have that gene in my body, I like to help people that do. And so getting to know them and their businesses and asking questions and then being able to, so that's a big, thing that I loved about it. And then being able to take what I've learned and putting pen to paper and whether that's, helping them with a contract or writing, whatever it is, if we need to write them, depending whatever the project is, but being able to use those skills has really helped me in this profession. And so I'd say, skills that you need to be a successful lawyer, whether it's in the fashion industry or anywhere, but certainly in the fashion industry, an interest in people and being able to talk to them and really listen. I know that sounds so basic, but good listening skills and a genuine interest in people and learning about what they do. Because those are the best lawyers, is when not just I'm going to do this project for you and hand you a document, but I'm going to understand your business. And I'm going to understand what you go through, what your challenges are on a daily basis, and how I can help you with those. Being able to write clearly, putting your thoughts into words, whether that's even, because communication is, you're talking to people who aren't lawyers. You're taking legal concepts and trying to help somebody digest them who does not have a legal background. And so being able to either explain it in words, as I have not so eloquently done today, but, saying it in words or being able to write it down. So listening, writing, talking with people, to me, those are the skills. The legal stuff comes from practicing, right? You've got to have an interest and a willingness to learn and kind of this thirst for knowledge. But, the legal part comes the more you do it. But the parts that you really need to bring to the table as a student, as a young lawyer, are, the eagerness, the willingness to listen, the willingness to, the ability to write things down and communicate. those are all things you can kind of hone, in your undergrad and graduate education.
Yeah, I think writing and communication is so important.
So important.
Across the board. I've gotten so many resumes and letters from students that want to intern. It's just like, man, I'm sure you can do the job, but man, you're not really presenting yourself
right.
very well.
Right, and that's right. I tell we have summer interns right now, and I always tell them, nobody expects you, right, as a young lawyer, as a student, as an intern, nobody expects you to know how to be a lawyer and to go like argue in front of the Supreme Court. No, that is not the expectation, right? But if you want to be a successful young lawyer, student, intern, be on time, meet your deadlines, be able to write and communicate in a way that, to present yourself in a way where people can understand what you're trying to communicate. I mean, other than that, the rest will come. But those are the things that are easy that you can control right now.
Right. Yeah. So are you, how do your internships work? Are they per like summer, spring, fall, or do you, that's how you look at that?
Yeah. So we have a summer program. So we actually have two. We have a summer associate program where we go to law schools, in St. Louis, and then in the surrounding area, we have folks from Arkansas. I think we have folks from Tennessee one year. But we go to their law schools, and they have, on-campus interviewing, and we talk to students, and we bring a group of students in for the summer. So our summer program started a couple weeks ago, and they join us for a summer. Sometimes one or two might come back to help during the year if they're local, but we certainly don't want to interfere with their studies because law school should be number one. And then we also have a group of interns that are college interns. They obviously don't do any legal work. They have an interest in going to law school. They want to kind of be in a law firm environment. And so we find kind of more office jobs for them to do, but just to be in the environment and, meet people, make connections. That's as in the fashion industry is the same as the legal industry. It's, it's who right? It's obviously you want to be talented and you want to be good at what you do, but a lot of it is making connections and getting to know people. So we like to bring in a crop. I think we have maybe 8 office interns who are undergrads who just kind of are thinking about law school. They have an interest in it. And so we brought them in for the summer, and we might have, 1 or 2 stick around for the rest of the year. It's a great opportunity if it's something you're thinking about doing, certainly finding a way to work with a law firm or work with a company who has a legal team is a great way to kind of test the waters and see if that's something you might be wanting to do.
Are any of them specifically interested in fashion law?
Yes, I like to bring them over to my team. We have one. I know. Well, there's more than one, but there's one in particular I'm really excited about. She joined us for last summer. She's going to join us as a full-time associate in the fall. She is taking the bar exam this summer, but she's fantastic, and she has a background in engineering. So she wants to do IP work and patent work, but she has a very big interest in fashion and actually wrote a law journal article. We're very proud of her. It was on fashion and counterfeiting maybe, but so she's going to join us in the fall, and I've got a couple of other of our summer associates who have expressed interest. And I love the excitement and the enthusiasm. And that's part of the reason why we formalized our group, is to say, like, we are excited. We love what we do. And, we're here, and you should stay here and do this work with us, because it's a lot of fun. And you don't have to go to New York to do it. You can do it right here in St. Louis.
Do everything here.
Yeah.
All right. I have 2 more questions for you. They're not law related at all. Or fashion related.
Okay, now I'm intrigued.
Are you ready?
Yes, okay.
All right. Favorite place to go on a vacation?
Well, you've caught me off guard. Well, my favorite vacation that we ever took, my husband and I went to St. Lucia, and that was the most amazing vacation. So I don't know. I'm trying to think of somewhere like local I can promote, but that was by, hands down our favorite vacation.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be local.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
We spent like a week and a half there. And it was beautiful, and the people were amazing. And to me, that's it. It's like, if there's good people and good food, I'm there. I'm done.
That's good.
That's all I need.
All right. So that's the next question. Favorite food?
Favorite food?
Well, how about this? How about we take it local and favorite local restaurant in St. Louis?
So my favorite local restaurant is Farmhouse, which is in South City. And part of it is because the food is great. And the other part is it's just nostalgic for me because it was right down the street. When my husband and I got married, we moved to South City, and it was like right, you walk everywhere in South City. It was right down the street. And so there were so many nights where it was like, well, we'll just go to Farmhouse and sit at the bar and, drink our wine and eat our food and, our pre-kid. Now we're like suburbanites, and I drive a minivan and I'm 40 and I've got 3 kids, and we're not hip and cool anymore. But back when we were hip and cool, that's what we used to do. And so it has a special place in my heart.
And they started out as a food truck.
Do they?
I think so. I thought they started as a food truck.
Okay, well, I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, I think so.
I'll have to look it up.
A lot of people started as a food truck, and then they branch out and started a restaurant.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah,
that's the way to do it. Build a following.
That's right. Well, thank you so much for all the information. I'm super excited to get the chance to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was so fun, and I'm so thrilled to be on the podcast. And I love what you're doing, and I love what you do for St. Louis fashion. So
yeah,
I'm honored to be asked to be here.
Cool, and you are cool, by the way.
Well, thank you.
You said you were cool. I think
thank
you're cool.
you. I think my kids would disagree with you, but if Dwight Carter says I'm cool, then what do they know?
Yeah, you tell it. You tell it. Well, thanks everyone for watching and listening, and please like and share and subscribe, and we will see you next time. Thank you.